Chapter 1. The Move-In and the Mess. The truck door creaked open with a groan, and Ivy Dawson stepped out into a breeze that smelled like damp pavement and late summer grass. Same street, same mailbox, same cracked sidewalk outside 317 Wilkins Lane. Only now, it felt smaller. Mia clambered out of the passenger side behind her, grumbling as she yanked her backpack out of the seat. Is this seriously it? This, Ivy said, dragging out the word as she stared at the faded white porch in front of them, is home. For now, Mia huffed, already swatting at bugs. It looks like the house forgot people lived here. That makes two of us, Ivy muttered under her breath. It had been 5 years since she'd last stood on this street. 5 years since their mom packed them up in the middle of a rainy April and moved them 3 states away. Now, their mom was deployed overseas, and Ivy, 18 and barely holding it together, was back where it all began, trying to pretend like she knew how to play grown-up and guardian all at once. She hadn't told Mia that she'd cried in the U-Haul parking lot before they left. She hadn't told her that the second she saw the porch again, her chest cracked open like an old attic door. Because she hadn't just left this house. She'd left him. Theo Reed, the boy next door. Back then, he was tall, quiet, all angles and long eyelashes, always sketching something in the margins of his notebooks. They were best friends once. The kind you build forts with and accidentally fall in love with when you're 15 and don't have the words for it yet. And then she left, without saying goodbye, without waiting for him to come back that night. Because the truth was, she'd been afraid he wouldn't come. Ivy balanced a box on her hip and tried the key. It stuck. Of course it did. Here, Mia said, reaching to push the door harder. You're being gentle with it, like it's a newborn. It's an old house, Ivy said. It needs patience. Well, it smells like old peanut butter and mothballs. So maybe don't be so patient. Ivy laughed in spite of herself. Inside, the house was a time capsule of peeling paint and musty carpet. Her mother hadn't rented it out after they left, just locked it up and left it to memory and spiders. The living room still had the faded mural Ivy painted one summer, the one with the tree and stars. The kitchen window still had the crack shaped like a lightning bolt. The back door still squeaked like it was clearing its throat before opening. Ivy dropped the box on the floor and sat cross-legged in the middle of the room, letting the stillness swallow her for a moment. You okay? Mia asked, nudging her. I'm fine, Ivy said with a shaky smile. Just remembering. Mia squinted at the back window. Didn't the cute guy used to live next door? Ivy froze. Still does. Later that afternoon, as she hauled another box up the front steps, a familiar voice cut through the still air. You need help with that? Ivy's breath caught. She turned. There he was. Theo Reed. Taller now. Broader. Same thoughtful eyes. Same quiet intensity. But there was something different about him, too. Something heavier in the way he stood. Like he'd learned how to carry things that weren't his fault. He wore a dark green hoodie with paint smudges on the sleeve, and his jaw tightened the second she looked at him. Ivy, he said flatly. She managed a breathy hi. A beat of silence passed. Then another. I thought you weren't ever coming back. Her heart twisted. Yeah, I thought that too. Theo's gaze dropped to the box in her arms, then back up. You look different. So do you. He nodded once. You're staying long? I'm here for the school year. Taking care of Mia while my mom's deployed. He crossed his arms. Guess that makes you my neighbor again. She tried to smile. I guess so. But he didn't smile back. He just gave a single, unreadable look, then turned and walked away. And Ivy realized something she hadn't let herself admit. Coming back would be harder than leaving ever was. Chapter 2. Theo in the window. Theo Reed wasn't spying. At least, that's what he told himself. He stood behind the half-closed blinds of his upstairs bedroom window, arms crossed over his chest, watching as Ivy lugged a laundry basket across the lawn. He wasn't spying. He was observing. Okay, fine. He was spying. But he had every right. The girl next door had disappeared 5 years ago like a ghost in denim shorts and a crooked smile. No goodbye. No explanation. Just gone. And now she was back, acting like she could move in with her half-size boxes and baby sister like the street hadn't missed her. Like he hadn't missed her. Theo shifted his weight and rubbed the back of his neck, then turned away from the window with a curse under his breath. He grabbed his sketchbook from the desk, flipped it open, and stared at the page he'd left unfinished last night. It was a face. Hers. Drawn from memory. Eyes half laughing, half sad. The way she looked when she caught him watching her from the treehouse across the fence that summer he turned 15 and realized the best part of his day was always next door. He slammed the sketchbook shut and stood. He needed to get out of this house. Now, Ivy, meanwhile, was elbow-deep in dusty curtains and a box labeled summer stuff, trying not to think about the way Theo had looked at her, or rather, through her, the day before. He hadn't been mean, but he hadn't been him either. Not the boy who used to sneak her Oreos during sleepovers or trace invisible stars on her arm when they were supposed to be watching movies. Not the boy who promised to teach her how to skateboard and ended up with a sprained wrist and a crush so loud it echoed off the pavement. This version of Theo was quiet, guarded, distant, and Ivy didn't blame him. She hadn't meant to leave like that. But what was she supposed to say at 15? Hey, my mom's packing up our lives, and I'm not brave enough to tell you that you're the only reason I don't want to go? She didn't even say goodbye. Now here she was, with guilt clinging to her like sweat. Ivy, Mia's voice rang through the hallway. There's a guy outside with a wrench, and he looks like he could bench press a truck. Ivy blinked, walked to the window, and there he was again. Theo, at their side porch, fixing the broken hinge on the screen door. Just like that. No explanation. No hello. Just hands busy, head down, hoodie sleeves rolled to his elbows. Ivy stepped onto the porch slowly, heart tapping against her ribs. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. He didn't look up. Didn't want it falling on your sister. A pause. Thanks, she said. Still no eye contact. Just a tight shrug. Theo, she tried, quieter now. Can we talk? He finally looked up. His eyes met hers, and it felt like a punch to the stomach. Memories flooding in like sunlight through broken blinds. I don't know, he said flatly. Can we? Then he turned, gathered his tools, and walked back across the lawn. Ivy stood frozen on the porch, watching his retreating back. And in the window above his garage, behind those blinds she knew by heart, a sketchbook sat closed and aching with the face he hadn't forgotten. Chapter 3. Unsaid Things and Shared Walls. The thing about living next door to Theo Reed, you never really stopped hearing him. Ivy lay on her bed later that night, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled strum of his guitar through the wall they once pretended didn't exist. They used to joke about it, called it the talking wall, like it had a personality, like it was their own little secret passage between worlds. Now it just felt like a barrier, a reminder of everything that wasn't being said. The next morning, Ivy tried to keep her head down. She walked Mia to school, unpacked more boxes, scrubbed the grime from the baseboards, and restocked the fridge with the bare minimum. And every time she passed the living room window, her eyes flicked to the house next door. His curtains were open. His truck was gone. Good. Or not good. She didn't know anymore. That afternoon, she found herself standing in front of the old fence separating their yards. The same fence they'd sat on when they were 10, pretending to be kings and queens of two imaginary kingdoms. The paint was still chipped. So was her heart. Later, Ivy climbed the rickety stairs to the attic. She hadn't planned to cry, but when she opened the box marked old stuff, it hit her all at once. A photo. The kind you forget exists until it rips the air from your lungs. It was the two of them, her in a ridiculous paper crown, him wearing that smudged Captain America hoodie, grinning like the world was still simple. She sank to the floor, photo trembling in her hand. She missed him. The boy who knew her favorite cereal, who let her wear his hoodies, who once swore he could feel it in his chest when she was sad, even through the wall. And she missed them, before everything cracked and scattered. That night, just after 10, the doorbell rang. Ivy froze, brushing her fingers under her eyes as she padded downstairs. She opened the door and found Theo standing there, hands in his pockets, eyes dark beneath the porch light. He didn't say anything right away. Then finally, Mia's bedroom light was flickering. Just wanted to let you know before it shorts out. Oh, she said, surprised. Thanks. He hesitated. Need help fixing it? Ivy blinked. You don't have to. I don't mind. She stepped aside. He didn't meet her eyes as he passed, but he smelled like pine soap and old paper, like memories and something steady. Theo headed upstairs without a word, and Ivy followed, pulse skittering like it used to during sleepovers where they whispered until 2 a.m. He fixed the bulb in 5 minutes flat. As he stood to leave, she found her voice. I found an old picture of us today, she said. From the fence. He didn't look at her. Burn it, She flinched, but then he looked back. Finally, and there was pain in his eyes, not malice. I didn't mean that, he said, voice rough. I know. They stood in silence, that same ache hanging between them. Finally, Ivy whispered, do you ever miss how things were? Theo didn't answer at first. Then, quietly, like it cost him something, every single day. And with that, he turned and disappeared through the door, leaving her standing in the glow of a repaired light bulb and 1,000 unsaid things. Chapter 4. Letters Never Sent. Theo had never meant to keep them. The letters. At first, they were just scraps. A way to clear his head the day after Ivy left without a word. Notes he never sent because what was the point? She was gone. And then the habit stuck. Whenever the ache got too loud or the memories started looping in his brain like a song with no end, he wrote her. Some letters were angry. Some were sad. A few were funny. Most were messy. All were honest. He kept them in a worn shoebox tucked behind his sketchbooks in the bottom drawer of his desk, so hidden that even his mom, who cleaned like a hawk, hadn't found them. Tonight, after walking out of Ivy's house with her questions still echoing in his chest, do you ever miss how things were? He pulled the box out. His fingers hesitated on the lid. Then, slowly, he opened it. The oldest letter was on notebook paper with a coffee stain on the corner. Dear Ivy, I waited on the curb for 3 hours that night. You said you'd come say goodbye. You didn't. I guess I deserve that. I probably should have told you how I felt instead of drawing it and hoping you'd figure it out. But it doesn't stop me from feeling like I lost something I never even had the guts to fight for. Theo swallowed hard. He flipped to another one. This one was from last spring. I saw your name pop up in a friend's tagged photo last week. You still tilt your head when you laugh. My stomach still drops when I see your face. That has to mean something, right? I wish you were here. Scratch that. I wish you were here and things weren't broken. He closed the box and pushed it away. She was here now, and he didn't know what to do with that. Across the fence, Ivy was rereading an old journal entry from when she was 14. Her handwriting was bigger back then, rounder, like she hadn't yet learned how much the world could weigh. It was the entry where she wrote, I think I might love him. Like, really love him. But he's Theo and I'm me, and I don't know if he'd ever see me that way. A humorless smile pulled at her lips. If only she'd known. The next morning at school, Ivy's locker jammed halfway open, of course, and she dropped half its contents on the floor in the middle of the hallway. Before she could crouch to pick it up, a familiar hand reached down, scooping up a book. Theo. They both froze as their fingers grazed. She looked up, startled. You didn't have to. You always overstuff lockers. Some things don't change. A beat. I forgot you remembered that, she said softly. I forgot a lot of things, he replied, but his voice was quieter this time. He handed her the book and stood. And just as quickly, he turned and walked off. That afternoon, as Ivy unpacked another box in the garage, she found something tucked behind the water heater, a small tin box with stickers on it. Her old memory box. Inside were random pieces of her childhood, a friendship bracelet, a concert stub, and a folded-up sheet of notebook paper in Theo's handwriting. Her breath hitched. It was one of the notes he'd passed her in history class years ago. If you ever need me, I'm next door. Always. Ivy pressed the note to her chest, her eyes stinging. Some things did change. But not that. Chapter 5. The Trouble with Goodbyes. The trouble with goodbyes is that sometimes they echo. They don't just happen once. They linger. They repeat. They show up in places you least expect, like a squeaky porch step, or the way someone says your name, or the hallway where you once stood hoping they'd turn back and didn't. For Ivy, the goodbye she never got to say to Theo had been showing up all week. In his silence, in his distance, in the way he looked at her like she was still leaving, even when she was standing right in front of him. Friday afternoon, Tessa dragged Ivy to the student council setup for the upcoming fall social. Ivy didn't want to go. She didn't care about fairy lights or themed snacks. But Tessa insisted, and Ivy owed her that much after bailing on lunch twice this week. The gym was chaos, half-decorated tables, glitter on every surface, and boys arguing over speaker cables. Ivy spotted Theo near the back wall, helping string lights overhead. He moved with that same quiet efficiency, hoodie sleeves pushed up, hair falling slightly into his eyes. He hadn't seen her yet, but she saw him, and that was enough to tie her stomach in knots. Tessa nudged her with a soda can. You gonna talk to him, or just orbit from a distance like a sad little moon? Ivy snorted. That obvious? You look at him like he's gravity. Ivy didn't answer, because she didn't have to. 20 minutes later, Ivy finally found her courage. Or maybe she just got tired of pretending not to feel like she was unraveling. She walked up to Theo while he was testing the plug on the wall. "Hey," she said. He looked up, startled. "Hey, I was thinking," she hesitated, then powered through. "We should talk. Like really talk. Not in half sentences on porches." He studied her face for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Okay. Now." He glanced around. "This place isn't exactly private. There's a music room down the hall. It's usually empty." He didn't argue, just followed. The music room was dark, quiet, and smelled faintly of dust and sheet music. Theo leaned against the piano bench, arms crossed, while Ivy paced like the words might fall out if she moved fast enough. She stopped, faced him. "I should have said goodbye." Theo's eyes didn't soften, but they didn't harden either. "Yeah, you should have. I was 15 and scared," she whispered. "My mom said we were leaving, and I didn't know how to tell you without breaking." "You think it didn't break me when you didn't?" Her breath caught. "I know it did, and I hate that." Silence. Then, slowly, Theo said, "I waited on the curb that night. For hours. I know. I wrote you letters." That made her look up sharply. He regretted saying it immediately. "Letters," she echoed, eyes wide. Theo shrugged, defensive now. "Doesn't matter. I didn't send them. I wish you had." "I don't." I was mad. Hurt. Confused. I said things I shouldn't have. I still would have read every word. Another silence. Then he said softly, "Would it have changed anything?" Ivy blinked, heart thudding. "I don't know. That's what I thought." After a long pause, she stepped closer. "I'm here now, Theo. And are you staying?" His voice was quiet. Raw. She searched his eyes, then nodded. "I'm not going anywhere." He didn't smile, but something in his shoulders eased. And for the first time, the goodbye they never said began to fade. Chapter 6. The Apology That Wasn't Enough. Saturday morning arrived with cool skies and a breeze that carried the first scent of autumn. Ivy stood at the community bulletin board outside the town bakery, pinning a flyer for the upcoming school social beside a missing cat poster and a note advertising part-time lawn care. It should have been a simple moment. But behind her, voices whispered, "She's the Dawson girl, right? Disappeared for 5 years. Shows up like nothing happened. Poor Theo. That boy waited for her. Everyone knows it." Ivy's hand froze mid-pin. She didn't turn around. She just took a slow breath, pressed the final corner into the corkboard, and walked away. The truth was, her absence hadn't just hurt Theo. It had made waves. She hadn't thought about how her sudden exit might have looked to everyone else. How it would feel like abandonment to the people who had once called her family. Their neighborhood was small. Their school even smaller. People noticed when someone left. And they noticed even more when that someone came back with quiet eyes and a carefully practiced smile. Later that afternoon, Ivy sat on the bleachers by the empty football field, scrolling aimlessly through her phone, wishing she could rewind time, or at least fast-forward it to when things didn't feel so heavy. Theo's voice startled her. "You skipped the decorating committee's pizza party." She looked up. Didn't feel like pizza. He slid onto the bench beside her, not too close. Just close enough for her heart to trip over itself. "I heard what people said," he said quietly. "Yeah," she replied, trying not to sound bitter. "Seems like the whole town has a lot of opinions. They're not all fair. I don't blame them." Theo paused. "You don't have to apologize to them." "Maybe not," she murmured. "But I still feel like I should." He looked at her for a long moment, his voice low. "You already apologized to me. Was it enough?" He didn't answer right away. Finally, "I don't think it ever could be." Her chest tightened. "Oh, but," he added, "that doesn't mean I didn't hear it." She turned to face him. "Then what does it mean?" Theo shrugged, gaze fixed on the empty field. "It means I'm trying to believe it. Trying to believe you." His honesty hit her like a wave. Not harsh, but deep. "You used to believe in me," she said, almost a whisper. "I used to believe in a lot of things. And now," his voice dropped, "now I'm learning how to believe again." They sat in silence. Not awkward, just true. Then, softly, Ivy said, "I want to fix this. And if you can't, then I'll stay anyway. Keep showing up. Keep choosing you. Even if it takes 100 slow days to get back what we had." Theo finally turned to her, and for the first time, something flickered behind his eyes, like a match being struck. "I'd let you," he said quietly. And Ivy felt something shift. Not everything was healed. Not yet. But something had finally begun. Chapter 7. Dinner on the porch. The porch light glowed warm against the twilight, and Ivy stepped outside carrying 2 plates, one balanced carefully in each hand. She paused on the top step, took a breath, and looked toward the house next door. Theo was already walking across the grass, hoodie sleeves rolled, hands in his pockets like he was trying not to make it look like he'd been waiting. He had been. So had she. "I hope you still like spaghetti," she said, holding out a plate as he climbed the steps. "I'd eat gravel if you made it," he replied. It slipped out so fast, it made them both pause. Theo cleared his throat, reaching for the plate. "I meant, thanks. Looks good." Ivy smiled, sitting across from him on the wooden swing. The night air was soft and a little damp, the kind of quiet that made everything feel more real. They ate in silence for a few minutes. The only sounds the gentle creak of the swing and the occasional click of a fork against the plate. "This is nice," she said softly. "Feels familiar." "Yeah," Theo said, his voice low. "Almost like we never left." She glanced at him. "I never stopped missing this." He didn't answer, but he didn't need to. After they finished eating, Theo leaned back on the swing, eyes on the moon above the rooftops. "I used to sit out here," he said, "after you left. I'd stare at this porch and tell myself it would feel better in a week. Or a month." "Did it?" she asked. No, his voice was honest, without bitterness. "It just got quieter." Ivy hugged her knees to her chest, her hair falling over one shoulder. "I used to wonder what you were doing. If you hated me." "I didn't hate you. You acted like you did." Theo gave a dry laugh. "Yeah, well, I was 16 and wrecked and didn't know what else to do." She looked at him then. "What would you have done if I had said goodbye?" He paused, then said softly, "I would have kissed you." Ivy blinked, her heart stalling in her chest. "I was going to," he admitted. "That night. I had it all planned out. You were supposed to meet me by the treehouse. I waited there for hours. I never went." "I know." A silence stretched between them. Not sharp, just heavy. "I think I was in love with you back then," Ivy said, barely louder than the wind. "I just didn't have the words." Theo's jaw clenched, his eyes never leaving the sky. "I think I never stopped." Her breath caught. They sat like that for a while. 2 people with shared history and broken timelines, speaking in half sentences and whole truths. The kind of moment that only happens when the porch lights are low and the walls finally come down. Later, as Theo stood to leave, he looked down at her, hand resting on the porch rail. "I'm not trying to guilt you," he said. "I just want you to know I waited because you were worth waiting for, even if it hurt." "I'm sorry," she whispered, voice breaking. "I know." He hesitated. Then he leaned down, not close enough to kiss her, but close enough for her heart to scream at the space between them. "I'm still here," he said, just loud enough for her to hear. And then he walked back across the lawn, disappearing into the shadows of the night. Ivy sat on the swing, tears in her eyes, and whispered to the quiet, "So am I." Chapter 8. The truth about that night. The storm rolled in fast. Wind howled against the houses, thunder rumbled like an angry sky god clearing his throat, and by the time Ivy got the last window shut, the rain was coming down in sheets. She stood in the kitchen barefoot, watching lightning flicker through the windows. Mia was at Tessa's for the night, which meant, for the first time since they moved back, the house was completely silent. Except for the knock at the door. 3 soft taps. Ivy's heart skipped. She opened it to find Theo on the porch, his hoodie soaked through, hair matted to his forehead. "Hey," he said, almost breathless. She blinked. "Are you okay?" "Yeah. I needed to talk to you. I can come back." "No," she said quickly, stepping aside. "Come in." He hesitated, then stepped through the doorway, rain dripping from the sleeves of his hoodie onto the floor. "I can get you a towel," she offered. "I'm fine." She looked at him, really looked. His jaw was tight. His hands were clenched at his sides like he'd been holding something too long. And then he said it. "I lied." Ivy's stomach dropped. "About what?" "About why I didn't come to your goodbye party. The one you threw that night." She stared at him. "You said you forgot." "I didn't forget." He stepped further into the room, voice rough. "I knew about it. Tessa told me. I even had my shoes on. But I didn't come." "Why?" Her voice was thin, fragile. "Because I couldn't do it. I couldn't stand there pretending like I wasn't completely falling apart. I was scared that if I saw you smile at me and say goodbye, I'd tell you not to go. And you'd either hate me for it or, worse, You'd say yes and regret it later. He looked up at her then, eyes wild with stormlight and pain. I didn't want to be the reason you stayed. Ivy felt the air leave her lungs. You thought I would have stayed for you? I knew you would have, he said. And I didn't want to trap you in a life you didn't choose. She took a shaky breath. Theo, I told myself it was better this way. That letting you go without a scene was noble or whatever. But it wasn't. It was just cowardice. I was a kid who didn't know how to fight for something that mattered. Silence. Then Ivy stepped closer, voice trembling. I would have stayed. I know. And I would have meant it. I know that now. She reached for him, her fingers brushing his wet hoodie sleeve. You didn't trap me, Theo. You were the reason I wanted to stay. You were the only thing that ever felt like home. His face crumpled just slightly. And before either of them could second-guess it, they moved at the same time. No kiss. Just a hug. Raw, bone-deep, soaking wet and breath-stealing. Ivy clung to him like the only safe thing in the storm. And Theo held her like he had been waiting 5 years to feel her heart beat against his again. Later, as the rain quieted, Theo sat on the couch with a blanket wrapped around his shoulders, sipping the tea Ivy made with trembling hands. She sat across from him, knees tucked under her chin. Thank you for telling me, she said. I should have told you sooner. You weren't ready. He nodded, eyes on the rim of his mug. You still make this the same way. She smiled. So do you. Another pause. Then he looked at her, soft but certain. Next time, I won't walk away. Ivy's voice was barely a whisper. Next time, I'll wait on the curb. They both smiled. And outside, the storm passed. Chapter 9. The Skate Park and the Almost Kiss. It was Theo's idea. Come with me, he said the next morning, his tone light but unreadable. Ivy blinked, still recovering from the intensity of the night before. Where? He just shrugged, that half-smile twitching at the corners of his mouth. Somewhere you've never seen. But I have. So she went. They drove in his truck, windows down, air warm with late fall wind. Ivy stole glances at him between turns. The quiet tension of the past week had thinned, like they were walking through a door neither of them wanted to close again. After 15 minutes of winding roads and back streets, Theo pulled into an empty lot tucked behind a set of half-abandoned buildings. The sign on the chain-link fence read East Ridge Skate Park, closed for maintenance. Ivy raised an eyebrow. We're trespassing? Technically. He grabbed a folded-up board from the back seat and climbed the fence like he'd done it 100 times. She stared after him. You're serious. He grinned from the other side. Come on, Dawson. I won't let you fall. The park was overgrown and cracked in places, but Ivy could see it. This was his place. Graffiti art covered the walls. Her eyes landed on a giant mural in black and cobalt blue. It was a face. Familiar. Soft smile, thoughtful eyes. Her eyes. She turned slowly. Theo had the decency to look sheepish. I painted it 2 years ago. Her voice was quiet. It looks like me. It is you. She stared at it, throat tight. You remembered my face that well? I never forgot it. Silence stretched, electric and fragile. Then, as if needing to break the moment, he tossed her a helmet. You're skating today. I haven't touched a board in 6 years. Then you're overdue. She laughed nervously. You're going to regret this. Not a chance. What followed was 30 minutes of Ivy wobbling like a baby deer while Theo guided her through the basics. She shrieked the first time she rolled 5 feet without grabbing his arm. He laughed, a full, unguarded laugh that made her heart stretch inside her chest. By the time they collapsed onto a patch of cool concrete beside the half-pipe, they were breathless and lightheaded from more laughing than skating. Theo laid back against the curve of the ramp, hands behind his head, eyes on the sky. Ivy sat beside him, hugging her knees, cheeks pink from sun and adrenaline. This feels like summer, she whispered. He nodded. It's the first time in a long time that everything's felt easy. She looked at him. Did you come here a lot? Whenever I needed to think. Or stop thinking. She nudged his sneaker with hers. I like it. He turned his head toward her, a lock of hair falling over his forehead. Yeah. She nodded. It feels like you. He swallowed, eyes searching hers. Then he said it. You still feel like home. The air shifted. She leaned in slightly, barely, but enough. He did too. So close. Her breath mingled with his. Her heart raced. And just when the space between them evaporated, her phone rang. Loud. Shrill. Like a bucket of ice water. She jerked back, fumbling in her hoodie pocket. It's Mia. Theo blinked, sitting up, clearing his throat. Answer it. Hey, is everything okay? Ivy said quickly into the phone. Mia's voice came through, panicked. Ivy, I think someone followed me home from school. Ivy froze. What? Where are you now? I ran to Tessa's, but I'm scared. Theo was already moving, grabbing the board and hopping the fence in record time. Ivy chased after him. Tessa's house. We'll go now. No more words. Just action. Because some moments are stolen, and some are interrupted. But the important ones, the ones that matter, they come back. Chapter 10, The Birthday Letter. Mia was fine. Shaken, scared, tearful, but fine. By the time Ivy and Theo reached Tessa's house, the guy had disappeared, and Tessa's older brother had already called a friend on the local patrol to report it. Mia ran into Ivy's arms the second she walked through the door, holding her like she used to after thunderstorms when they were little and their mom was working late. I didn't know where else to go, Mia whispered into Ivy's shoulder. You did the right thing, Ivy said, rocking her gently. You're safe. I'm here. From the corner of her eye, she saw Theo watching them, arms crossed, jaw tight, not out of anger, but protective tension. She hadn't even asked him to come. He just did. Like always. Like someone who'd never stopped caring. After the police took a statement and things calmed down, Ivy stayed long enough to help Mia settle with Tessa for the night. Theo drove her home in silence. Not awkward, just heavy with the kind of exhaustion that comes after an adrenaline crash. When they pulled into the driveway, Ivy didn't get out right away. She turned toward him in the quiet truck cab. Thank you. For everything today. You don't have to thank me. I do, she said gently. You show up. Every time. Even after everything. Theo didn't look at her. I guess part of me still doesn't know how to not show up for you. The words hit her deep. I have something for you, he added suddenly, like it had just occurred to him. He reached into the glove compartment and pulled out a slightly crumpled envelope. Her name was scrawled across the front in his messy handwriting. She took it slowly, eyebrows lifting. What is this? Open it. She did. Inside was a letter, dated almost 3 years ago. Her 16th birthday. Ivy's hands shook as she unfolded the paper. She could barely breathe as she read. Ivy, happy birthday, wherever you are. I hope you're laughing. I hope you still tilt your head when you smile. I hope your eyes still do that sparkle thing when you're talking about something you love. I don't know if you ever think about me, but I think about you. I thought about showing up at your old apartment. I even drove past it once, but I couldn't do it. I didn't want to show up in your new world and realize I didn't belong there anymore. If you're reading this, it means I got brave. It means I finally let you see the part of me I've been hiding since the night you left. The part that never stopped writing you letters. You were my favorite hello. Still are. T. Ivy wiped at her eyes, heart pounding. When she looked up, Theo was watching her, uncertain. Like he didn't know if he'd done too much or not enough. She folded the letter carefully, holding it to her chest. You kept writing? He nodded once. It was the only way I knew how to hold on. I don't want you to hold on anymore, she whispered. I want you to choose me. Now. Not just in letters. I did, he said. I do. Then, softer. But you have to choose me too. She reached across the center console, threading her fingers through his. I never stopped. And this time, there was no phone call. No interruption. Just stillness. And something that felt a lot like finally. Chapter 11. The Social and the Slow Dance. The fall social was a blur of fairy lights and second chances. Ivy stood at the edge of the gym, breath catching at the sight of the place she'd once loathed. Somehow, it had transformed. Streamers arched across the ceiling like stars in motion, and someone had strung lanterns from the basketball hoop. The scent of apple cider mixed with cheap cologne and cinnamon cookies. But it wasn't the decorations that made her heart race. It was him. Theo stood on the far side of the room, leaning against the snack table in a navy button-down that made his shoulders look even broader. His sleeves were rolled, his jaw clean-shaven, and for the first time in a long time, he looked relaxed. Whole, like a boy finally stepping into his future instead of just surviving his past. Ivy smoothed her dress and crossed the floor slowly. He saw her before she reached him. And when he did, everything else, the music, the laughter, the crowd, faded. You came, he said quietly, eyes sweeping over her. I told you I would, she replied. Nice shirt. He smirked. Tessa made me change 3 times. She was right. Theo chuckled. You look like trouble. I always did. He held out a hand. Dance with me. Her throat caught. No one had asked her that since she'd moved back. No one had ever said it quite like that, like a question and a promise in one. She took his hand. The music slowed, some soft acoustic cover of a pop song drifting through the speakers. Theo led her to the middle of the floor. Around them, other couples swayed. Tessa twirled her date near the bleachers, and even Mia giggled in the corner with a group of sophomore girls. But Ivy didn't see any of it. Only Theo. His hand settled on her waist, warm and steady. Her fingers curled against his shoulder. They moved slowly, carefully, like they were still remembering how to do this. "How's your heart?" he asked, so softly she almost didn't hear it. She looked up. Better. Still bruised, but better. Mine too. They didn't need to talk about the past anymore. Not tonight. Not when the present was finally theirs. "I keep thinking about that letter," she said quietly. "About how much you held in. I didn't know how to let go of you," he said. "I tried, but I think I always knew you'd come back. I was always going to come back. I just didn't know how long it would take to be brave enough." He pulled her slightly closer. "You're here now." The moment hung like breath in the cold, fragile, tender, full of light. And though the song faded, they didn't stop moving. They just kept dancing, as if time had folded in on itself and was finally giving them back the years they'd lost. Later that night, as the social ended and students poured into the parking lot in bursts of laughter and loud music, Theo walked Ivy home beneath a sky full of stars. They paused on her porch steps, reluctant to let the night go. "Ivy," he said, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear, "I don't know what happens next. I don't know if we're going to get it all right. I don't either. But I do know I want to try. Not as the boy you left, but as the man who's still here." Her eyes shimmered. "Then let's try? From right here." He leaned down slowly. This time, no lightning, no phone calls, no interruptions. Just her and him, hearts finally in rhythm. And the kiss? It wasn't rushed or fiery. It was slow, soft, the kind that felt like turning a page. The kind that said, "I'm still here." Chapter 12. The Photo Album and the Future. Sunday morning arrived gentle and golden, with sunlight spilling across Ivy's bedroom floor like a warm invitation. For once, the air didn't feel heavy. It felt expectant, hopeful. She spent the early hours flipping through boxes she still hadn't unpacked, humming softly under her breath. In one corner, under a pile of scarves and in used notebooks, she found it, the old photo album. The one her mom had started when they first moved into this house, years ago. The one Ivy had stuffed full of ticket stubs, glittery birthday cards, and Polaroids of summers that felt like lifetimes ago. She sat cross-legged on the floor and opened it slowly. Page 1. Theo and Ivy in bike helmets, grinning like fools. Page 4. Theo asleep in the treehouse, a book open on his chest, a candy bar melting beside him. Page 7. The neighborhood 4th of July, sparklers in their hands, their names written in light. Tears gathered in her eyes. And then, tucked between two pages, a note fell out. A scribbled sentence in her own handwriting. "One day, I'm going to marry someone who knows me better than I know myself." Her heart fluttered, because even back then she knew. That afternoon, Ivy walked next door with the album in hand. Theo opened the door in a plain t-shirt and joggers, his hair tousled like he'd just woken from a nap. "I brought something," she said, holding it out. He raised a brow. Memory lane? More like a time machine. They settled onto his living room floor, knees brushing. Ivy opened the book between them and turned the pages slowly, laughing, cringing, remembering. Theo pointed at a particularly embarrassing photo. "That was the day I fell off my skateboard trying to impress you. You broke your wrist. I broke my pride." She giggled, then grew quiet, tracing a photo of them in the treehouse. He watched her carefully. "What are you thinking?" She looked up at him, heart bare. "I'm thinking I wasted so many years pretending I could live without you." Theo exhaled. "I kept thinking that if I let myself hope again, it'd hurt more if it didn't work out. And now," he smiled gently, "now I know hope isn't the risk. Not hoping is." Ivy leaned her head against his shoulder. "Do you think we'll make it?" she whispered. Theo turned to her, eyes soft but sure. "I think we already are." Later, as dusk settled over the neighborhood, Theo led Ivy to the old treehouse. It creaked under their weight, but still held strong, like it had been waiting too. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket. She recognized it immediately. A letter. Another one he'd written. But this one wasn't old. He handed it to her without a word. She unfolded it slowly. Ivy, if you're reading this, it means we found our way back. It means you're here. It means the thing I've held on to longer than anything else, my love for you, is no longer just in memory. It's real again. Alive again. I don't need to write you letters anymore. Because now, I get to say it to your face. I love you, and I'm not afraid to say it. Theo. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks. She didn't speak. She just reached for him and held on. Because sometimes, the future isn't built from plans or perfect timing. Sometimes, it's built from truth and tenderness. And the choice to keep showing up. Chapter 13. Always Been You. The air was crisp the following Saturday as the town gathered for the fall festival. Ivy walked through the pumpkin-lined main street, flanked by hay bales and booths overflowing with cider and handmade crafts. Music played from the bandstand, and the scent of cinnamon and bonfires made everything feel wrapped in nostalgia. But nothing warmed her like the hand in hers. Theo walked beside her, thumb tracing slow circles against her palm, as if reassuring himself this was real. It was. People noticed them, whispered, smiled, and for the first time, Ivy didn't flinch at the attention, because she had nothing to hide anymore. They wandered into the community barn where an old bulletin board displayed photos from past festivals. Ivy paused in front of it, blinking at a snapshot of her and Theo as kids, covered in face paint and sticky caramel. He chuckled beside her. I remember that day. You tried to convince me pumpkins were actually a fruit. They are, she said with mock indignation. He grinned. You were always the smart one. She bumped his shoulder. And you were always the one I wanted beside me. His smile softened. Ivy, his tone shifted. She turned to him. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. A chain. A pendant. Her locket. She gasped. Theo, you dropped it. The day you left. I found it on the porch after I got home. She reached for it slowly, breath catching. Inside were 2 photos. One of them in front of the treehouse, the other, a note in tiny handwriting. Always come back. Her fingers trembled. I didn't even know I lost it. I kept it, he said. Hoped someday I'd get the chance to give it back. She looked at him through tears. I came back. He nodded. And you're staying. I'm staying. Later, as the sun dipped behind the hill and the festival wound down, Theo pulled Ivy onto the grassy edge of the bandstand where a slow song played beneath a string of glowing lights. No crowd, no pressure, just the 2 of them. He rested his forehead against hers. You remember when we were 15 and you told me you didn't believe in soulmates? She smiled. I lied. I know. He kissed her then, not with urgency, but with every quiet promise they had rebuilt, letter by letter, day by day. And when he finally pulled back, he whispered, It's always been you, Ivy Dawson. She blinked back tears. And it always will be. Epilogue, 6 months later. The porch swing creaked in the early spring breeze. Ivy rested her head on Theo's shoulder, a sketchbook in her lap, her fingers intertwined with his. The treehouse stood tall in the background, freshly painted and now featuring a handmade sign, Our Beginning Again. Inside the house, Mia was baking cookies while shouting at a homework app. Tessa texted hourly from college. The letters? Tucked safely in a new box, labeled proof that love finds its way back. Theo turned to Ivy, kissed her temple, and smiled like a man who had everything he needed. Because he did. And Ivy? She no longer wondered if home was a place. She knew now. It was a person. And it had always, always been Theo. Thank you so much for listening to Letters He Never Sent. We hope Ivy and Theo's journey reminded you that some bonds don't break. They bend, stretch, and grow stronger with time. That love, when it's real, doesn't need perfect timing. It just needs people brave enough to keep showing up. If you've ever longed for a second chance, held on to a memory longer than you meant to, or wondered if someone out there still thinks of you, this story was for you. And remember, you don't need the perfect words or the perfect moment. Sometimes, the most beautiful stories begin again with a single step forward and a heart willing to stay. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to Ever After Audiobooks, your home for clean, emotional, soul-soothing romance. Dizzy, we'll see you in the next story, because the best love stories are only just beginning.